in Barcelona, Spain. There is a unique church that has been under construction for over 100 years. It's called La Sagrada Familia, the Holy Family. And it was begun by the famous architect Gaudi, who never lived to see it completed. And over the years, there's been a dispute between the church officials and city officials as to who is going to finance the church's completion. And at times, there isn't any construction that takes place, and at times, the work continues along. Now, by our standards, this church building is a work of frustration. But by the standards of the Spaniards, its slow and tedious work is tradition. No one in Barcelona seems to be in a big hurry to finish this project. It's in a perpetual state of being built and becoming what it is intended to be. And in a way, the work of completing this church is an image of every family. Always a work in progress, always becoming. None of us here belongs to the perfect family. We all have our issues. Some of us have the whole subscription. And we have difficult situations, some more than others. But that we have a model of family living and the holiness that we're all called to, the church gives us today, the Holy Family. If you want to know how important the notion of family is in God's eyes, you need only to look at today's solemnity. Our gospel shows Joseph, Mary, and Jesus as a family, a real family with real problems. And in this instance, one that is faced with the crisis of a missing child. The Holy Family has much to teach us about what it means to be husbands and wives and parents, what it means to be obedient and respectful children. Now imagine, if you will, the shock and the fear of Mary and Joseph when they realize that Jesus is not with them as they travel home. How many times has this been repeated in the lives of families? One spouse turning to another, wasn't it your turn to watch them? Or, I thought you were watching them? And don't you dress your children in bright colors, young children in bright colors when you go someplace like the mall so that they're easier to find? Do you not do that? My mom used to do that with me. She'd say, wear that bright yellow shirt I got you so I can find you if you get lost. And, you can't imagine my brothers and sister were very happy about that, going to the mall looking like we were working for VDOT. And even when we went to World Youth Day, for every day that we were there, we had a different colored shirt that was all the same, not just a plain shirt, but cool for the young people, with World Youth Day stuff on it, some nice slogan. My favorite one, the best one, Team Jesus on the front, Benedict 16 on the back, like a baseball shirt. That was the shirt that everybody wanted. They wanted to trade for it. They wanted to have it. They wanted to keep it. We still have them now. The teens who went to World Youth Day, they were great, but they also were kind of bright orange yellow so that we could find them if they got lost. And thanks be to God, we didn't lose anybody, not on the metro and not walking through Madrid in crowds of tens of thousands of young people. But Mary did not have a bright yellow shirt for Jesus to wear. 3 days they searched for him. And she didn't think that she needed to have something. She thought that Jesus would just be there with the family. And the men and the women would have traveled separately in this caravan. So of course it's perfectly natural for Joseph to think, oh, the child Jesus is with Mary. For Mary to think Jesus at the age of 12, he is essentially an adult under the Jewish law, so he's traveling with his father. They go back to Jerusalem to find the Lord. And 3 days they search for him, kind of an image of his 3 days in the tomb, of 3 days when Mary was missing him after his crucifixion and death. And there they find him in the temple teaching with the teachers, all of them amazed at his understanding and wisdom. But Mary, like any mother, she wants an explanation. It's not enough that they just find him. Mary wants to know why he's done this. And this is something that all children should take to heart. When we do something that our parents see as wrong, Even if we have the best of intentions, we owe them not just an apology, but an explanation. It's not enough to say, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. We have to come to an understanding about what happened and why, so that we can learn from it. Our parents, we owe them an explanation. Now, Jesus had no other intention other than being about his heavenly Father's business and abiding in God's house. But the time of his public ministry had not yet come, not for another 18 years. So he returns with his family to continue the work of all families, the work of the Holy Family, to grow in wisdom and age and grace together, to be a support for each other in their calling before God the Father. Now, all of us are members of two families, one natural family and God's family as well. They are not exclusive, but bound up in each other in such a way that we are united in his love. And if we focus on being God's family, then being one in the heart of Christ under the same roof is so much easier. So being a holy family is not so much about the rules. It's about our relationship with God. Just like being a good husband or wife or child, father, mother can't be reduced to just the rules of getting along or how the home is managed. It's about our love for each other, love that desires the greatest good for the ones we love. And the greatest good is union with God and each other in this life, so that we can have perfect union with him in heaven. We love our families, no doubt, but is that love always seeking the greatest good? That's really the measure by which we should examine ourselves daily. Now notice something about Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. They are all children of God. Jesus, by nature, is the Son of God, co-eternal and consubstantial with God the Father. Mary and Joseph are children by grace, as we are. I mean, a lot of people who never learned along the way how to be a child of God. They just never learned. They may have learned their prayers. They may have learned something about the Bible and the teachings of our faith. They may have been taught right from wrong, but they never learned how to be simple and small and trusting and loving before God the Father, trusting in him with perfection, the perfection of a little child who knows that mom and dad are there. They love him. They delight in him. They treasure him. That is exactly how we are loved by God. And if we never learned how to be a child of God, to trust in him completely, to know that he delights in us and he treasures us, we grow up thinking God is out there somewhere. God is in heaven. God is way far away from us. Or God is some grouch who just wants us to get in line and do the right thing and follow the rules. But God is love. God is love. He longs for the greatest good for us, union with him and each other in this life, and eternal happiness that eye has not seen and ear has not heard, the eternal happiness of heaven. Live as God's family, and we will be more peaceful, holy, and loving families. And St. Paul shows us the way. He says, put on as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, heartfelt compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another and forgiving one another. As the Lord has forgiven you, so must you also do. And over all these put on love, that is the bond of perfection. So patience is an expression of our love. Certainly forgiveness is also an expression of our love. We can be impatient when children need to be corrected over and over and over again, when the days of Christmas break pass in the chaos of all the children being home all at once, and you think, with all this manpower or kid power, you might get something done around the house, but that takes some heroic effort, or gentleness and encouragement rather than raised voices. Patience is love. It is one of the most important expressions of our love. And if we remind ourselves that our patience is our love, it will be easier to grow in that virtue. And if we find ourselves repeating the same thing over and over again, or correcting the same fault, or correcting the same poor decision, just think how God the Father treats us. There you go. He treats us with the greatest patience, love, and humility. And children, Are you paying attention? You are not exempt from patience and forgiveness, especially you teenagers out there. Now let me ask you a question. You don't have to raise your hands, okay? Do any of you young people have an experience in your life of someone who always meets your expectations, always agrees with you, and always does what you want them to do? Anybody? No. None of us do. None of us do. So get used to it. Get used to it. That's life. If you're holding people to your expectations about how they should behave and live, you're never ever going to be at peace. Not at peace with your parents, not at peace with your brothers and sisters, certainly not at peace with anybody else. That is a lesson that you should learn now, because it will be repeated throughout your life, and especially when you have a family of your own. Now, St. Paul tells us that we have to forgive as the Lord forgives. And we have to understand then what forgiveness is. It is a choice. It is an act of the will. It doesn't depend on our feelings. And this whole notion that this very unfortunate expression that we have in our language, forgive and forget, it is contrary to our nature. God did not make us that way. We don't forget. Do you forgive and forget? Nobody does. Nobody does. But we can make that choice, that act of the will to forgive, and we have forgiven then. And then the Lord can heal our emotions. The Lord can bring His grace and His peace so that in time, those feelings won't have, that kind of power over us. We have to choose to forgive as an act of love. St. Paul also tells us that the word of Christ should dwell in us richly, not meagerly, not poorly, but richly. I feel like a broken record when I say that we all need to be praying together as families and as individuals each day. And I just realized as I was putting my thoughts together for this homily, most of the young people here don't know what a record is, right? So parents, please explain it to them, okay, what a record is and what a broken record is. And then they can tell you, when you're repeating yourselves, that you sound like a broken record. But it's true. It's been said so many times before. The family that prays together stays together. The family that prays together lives as children of God. And so that your sons and daughters know how to live as children of God, know how to be children of God. Without prayer and gratitude to the Lord and each other, we will not have the peace that the Lord wishes for us to abide in, the peace that He freely gives, the peace that only He can give. So every family is like that church that I spoke of, the Holy Family, La Sagrada Familia, that is the work of a lifetime, the work of grace and the work of love. Not that it depends on us alone, but it mostly depends on God. We shouldn't be discouraged or upset if our family isn't perfect. Rather, we should rededicate ourselves to the love that seeks heaven, the love that seeks the greatest good, the love that seeks Jesus, love for each other in Christ, and the patience and forgiveness that brings growth and healing. The patience and forgiveness that brings holiness and peace.